Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Capacity Building Institute webinar that we do here every single month. I'm Sam Laprade. We're getting ready to welcome all of you in. We've got a few participants joining us. If you've joined us before, you know that one of my favorite things to do is to invite all of you to tell me where you're coming from. We've had people all over the world, which is always very exciting. And of course, people here in beautiful Canada. So give us a shout and let us know in the chat where you're coming from today. We're going to be having a great discussion today regarding stewardship. We've covered so many different topics over the last couple of years, and stewardship is a favorite of mine. So I can't wait to get all the perspective today from Katherine Lacefield. We're going to be getting to that in just a minute. But I'm going to look in the chat today. I'm coming from beautiful Ottawa. I'm coming from Anishinaabe territory, unceded territory, and welcome hearing where all of you are joining me from too as well today. So definitely throw it in the chat. And we had somebody from New Zealand once, which was very exciting. And of course, everything from Charlottetown to Victoria and everything in between. So lots to talk about today. I don't want to waste 1 minute. So I'm going to introduce my good friend, Hannah Rockburn. Hi, Hannah. How are you?
Welcome, everyone. I'm Hannah Rockburn. I'm the operations manager here at the Capacity Building Institute located in Ottawa. So we are a nonprofit organization that provides training, coaching, and mentorship support to staff and volunteers of environmental leaders in the nonprofit sector here in Canada. Our mission and vision for the organization is to be able to provide equal opportunity and access to capacity building training for environmental leaders across Canada that are involved with nonprofits. And we have a variety of topics that we focus on with our training. So between financial management, governance, volunteer, communications and outreach, risk management, and leadership and culture. And we do this through a variety of programs. So the one program that we do have that's currently running is the Capacity Building Certificate Program. We started that in June, and so we have this as ongoing. We have our monthly webinar series that you're attending tonight. So that happens on the fourth Wednesday of every month from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. And then we also have our internship training program. So the intern training is geared for youth under the age of 30 that is just entering the nonprofit sector, and they're going to learn a little bit more about what it takes to be successful in working in the program after coming out of school. And specifically for that training, we actually have additional funding. So we are currently looking for organizations that have youth in their staff under the age of 30 in the Atlantic and Northern regions that would like to send their staff to training for free. So if you are in the Atlantic or Northern regions, we highly encourage you to reach out to us, as we can provide some professional career development skills training for your youth staff free of charge this year. We have some amazing trainers that help facilitate and run these programs. A few of Sam's here tonight, as well as we have Barb King, Rob Barnes, Alex Keenan, and we also now have Dwayne Taylor that's from New Pact that will help with our DEI and leadership and organizational culture themes for our training. And we just also want to thank you for all the funders that have made a lot of our programs possible, and different partnerships as well that help put together our training programs. In terms of contacting us, if you're in the Ottawa area, you can come to our office here at 136 F Billings Avenue. You can reach us by email or on our website. We also have a phone number that will contact me if you'd like to do a phone call. And then just to save the date for our next webinar series, so in July, we're going to be hearing from Robert Pye from Watersheds Canada on the topic of leadership transition. And what that can look like, and some sort of tips and tricks when you're getting a new ED or if you're new to the leadership position in your organization. And with that, I will pass it back to Sam.
Thanks so much, Hannah. Always a beautiful job done by you. Thank you so much. I am really excited today to introduce you to Katherine Lacefield. As I mentioned, stewardship is a favorite topic of mine. I'm excited to learn from Katherine today from Just Because Consulting. Katherine, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. It's also one of my favorite topics. So
well, there
we're
you
on the same
go.
page.
And you've prepared a wonderful presentation for us today, but just before we get to it, give us a little bit of your background.
So actually, it's really interesting. Now I am a philanthropy consulting, working with a variety of different nonprofits on everything from stewardship, but also fundraising strategy in general, training them on capacity, kind of similar to the capacity building institute as well. But my original background is in sustainable development. So I have an environmental background, and that slowly just developed into working with more and more nonprofits, and of course, giving me this overarching experience with nonprofits that allows me to support them in many different ways now. It's really interesting because at first I always thought I'd be like one of those like crazy Greenpeace activists, like tying themselves to trees to protect the environment. But as 10 years later, after being in activism for a long time, I realized that the most impact I could have was to actually transmit all my fundraising knowledge to nonprofits so that they can have more impact in their community. So really like exponentially supporting the movement overall.
Oh, I love that so much. So I'm going to get out of the way because I want to hear everything you have to say today. We're going to be able to connect after your presentation. I'll have some great questions. Encourage all of our friends joining us as well today to throw some questions in the Q&A. We'll get to a couple of those as well. I know the time's going to fly by, so I'm not going to waste one more second. Over to you, Katherine.
Thank you so much. All right, so I do have a presentation for you. I really wanted it to be as jam-packed with practical information as possible. And just a little bit of context, I just finished doing 2 conferences, one in Halifax and one in Montreal, that was really targeted towards nonprofits. And they were very different. One was with small grassroots animal protection nonprofits, and the other one was with institutional hospital foundations. And in both cases, these tips on stewardship and how to build relationships with their donors really resonated with them, which is why I thought this would be the best way to really share some of my knowledge with you guys today. All right, so let's get started because there is a lot to cover. So these are what we're going to be covering today. We're going to talk about the main challenges for nonprofits from my experience and from talking to many of them. Also talking about specifically a development plan. What should be included, what should not. So kind of more of a, let's take a step back and look at the overall strategy. And then we're going to dig deeper into stewardship itself and how we can be more organized and move forward with it. Okay, so the main challenges that I've noticed for nonprofits is, well, number one, most organizations do not have a fundraising strategy or a development plan. They lack this step back, holistic perspective on how all of the pieces come together. So that's one of the things I want to bring to the table today, is how your acquisition and your stewardship has to be connected and how both of them will allow you to have a better overview of where you're going with your next steps with your fundraising. What are you trying to achieve? Number 2 is a lack of internal data collection and management. So we're going to talk about how we can use the power of data to move your fundraising forward, and what kind of data does that mean, and how to organize it better so that you can have a clearer picture. Data is the new gold in today's day and age. They are selling your data for so much money, so make sure that your data yourself is being better organized. And the third one is about, there's little external donor data available to nonprofits, which is why there are some tools that exist. We're going to talk about how to find it, but that is a big challenge for nonprofits. So keep that in mind when you're trying to do your stewardship and your donor acquisition strategies. Okay, let's dive in. So the development plan. When I often talk to people about, okay, so what is your fundraiser or fundraising strategies? People kind of randomly spread, oh, we've done events, and then sometimes we have an annual campaign, and then sometimes we do this, but there doesn't seem to have like a strategy of why they're doing some of these strategies versus others. So I'm going to just go over quickly this donor pyramid so that we understand which strategies are the most common, and also how they go and how are they connected between each other. So number 1, most of the time that you're going to acquire a new donor is going to be through a one-time gift kind of deal. So this is going to be where peer-to-peer comes into place, events comes into place, or email campaigns, social media, all of these things is people that decide to make a first donation to your organization. And then ideally, you don't want to stop there. The whole objective of acquiring donors is to build relationships to move forward. Thinking about it almost like dating. If your goal is to just have one time, like first dates with a whole bunch of people, are you ever going to get to the point of a stable long-term relationship? No. So that's the same thing with donor management. If you're just going and constantly acquiring new donors that are going to give you a $20 here, maybe a $50 there, maybe $200 there, but you're not trying to build them up through time towards a more strong relationship, what's the point? So once you establish okay, we have an acquisition strategy for one-time gifts, the next level in the pyramid is going to be getting to ideally a monthly gift. So you're trying to convince people to build that commitment and that engagement with you so you have stable income month after month. I put the grants as a third level. Of course, grants and individual donations are separated, but the whole point is that the higher we go into the pyramid, the more the amount of the donation is going to be. So of course, individual one-time gifts are probably going to be smaller than the grants you're going to get later on. So that's why they're higher up in the pyramid. But the higher we go in the pyramid, the less donors there will be. So it's not that if you're just focusing on grants, you're good, because then you don't have this base of the pyramid that's going to be able to sustain your organization through time, which is why you need to have a bit of diversification in your strategies. So grants are, of course, there's an official process to fill out. And as you grow as an organization, you will probably also convert most of these grants into recurring gifts. Most foundations in the beginning will not just give, okay, we're going to donate to your organization over the next 5 years. They need to get to know you as well, because they have their own charitable status and they have their own strategies of how they're going to achieve their impact. So if they don't know if you're actually helping them move forward, they might not commit to a long-time relationship. So keep that in mind. And then after that, you're going to have the major gifts. And of course, the final is legacy gifts. So planned giving, when of course, there's nothing that follows that. But you need to start somewhere. So this is all to keep in mind when we're going to be talking about the importance of stewardship. Is keep in mind the stewardship that's going to be necessary from the acquisition of these donors. And then how are you going to be building them up towards larger donations that take less effort per donation. So your return on investment is going to be higher. So this is really just an introduction to fundraising strategy, but it's so important to keep this in mind when you're thinking about how are we going to do acquisition. Is you need to have a stewardship plan already in place of how you're going to bring these donors up in this pyramid. All right, moving on. Fundraising strategies for one-time gifts. I'm just going to once again go through them quickly because they all have to do with stewardship as well. So of course, these are some different strategies that can be in place. So face-to-face can be at an event. Let's say you have a booth and you're talking to people. Yes, would you like to donate? If also people have done street teams where people will be able to literally stop people on the street. I did that for 5 years. Absolutely exhausting, but so worth it in many ways. You can also think about phone fundraising, peer-to-peer, email, socials. So of course, the higher we go in this list, the resources that are going to be required are going to be higher. So hiring people that are going to go and talk to your donors individually is going to cost you a lot of money. But of course, as you are higher, the conversion rate is generally going to be higher. And then the lower you go, it's going to be lower. So someone face-to-face is much more likely to convert more donors because there's a relationship that's going to be built with the person. It's a lot harder to say no to someone in person than to ignore a social media post or an email. So of course, these are the different things you need to consider when establishing what strategies we're going to choose. But of course, the other thing I'm going to recommend is how are you going to be converting these people into regular donors? So it doesn't matter where they're coming from. You need a plan that is in place to continue the relationship. But as a little side note, I know it's not directly about stewardship, but when you're thinking about your fundraising strategies, keep that in mind all the time of not just what you like doing, but also how much resources are going to be required and what is the return on investment going to be. So it might be more expensive, but you might get more donors. So these are just some criteria to keep in mind. All right. So how to choose between these different strategies? These are questions that I recommend you ask yourself. What is the return on investment? Obviously, if you've never tried before, do some research. What is the average return on investment of different strategies? What is going to be the quality of the leads generated from different campaigns? So for instance, if you're doing a fundraising event and the event is a gala or a golf tournament, but you're an environmental organization or you're an animal shelter, what is the relation between that golf tournament and your organization? Are the people interested in that event actually interested in the cause, or do they care more about the event itself? So think about that, because if you're planning on converting these people that participated in this campaign into long-term donors, are these quality donors, quality leads? Keep that in mind. Then you have to think about what's your donor persona? Who are your usual donors to your organization? Is a golf tournament really something that's going to attract them? How old are your general donors? What do they like? What does their demographics look like? These are things that you need to consider before making your fundraising strategy decisions. And also, what's your internal capacity? If you're a team of two, an event is a lot of work and a lot of energy where that could be given to another campaign that might have a higher return on investment given your circumstances. These are also similar questions that need to be asked for stewardship. So let's directly talk about that now. The reason why I think stewardship is so important, and I don't know why it's so neglected in so many nonprofits that I've worked with, because retention of existing donors costs between 5 and 20 times less than acquiring new ones. So getting someone to give a second donation is going to cost you 5 to 20 times less than getting a new person. Again, I'm going to go back to the dating comparison. Once you've gone on a first date that went well with someone, the chances that you get a second date are much higher than getting a first date in the first place. So you have to think about it that these people have already said yes to you once. The likelihood and the percentage chance that they'll say yes a second time is much higher. So if we blasted 1,000 people that have never given, that percentage that's going to give is going to be small. But if you take then that percentage that gave and send them the same messages, you're probably going to get a higher return rate from that second segment. So how do we do this? First of all, you need to organize your data because you need to know who are these people that have already shown interest in your organization. So please tell me that you have a CRM. So CRM is your donor database. This is going to be your pot of gold of where you're going to be able to get information to build up your stewardship strategies. What information are you or not collecting on your donors? Do you have their birthday? Do you know what's their job? How did you get this donor in your database? Did it come from an event? Did they come from an email campaign? Did they come from social media? What information do you have on them that can help you build a relationship with them and get to know them? Third of all, how often do you clean your data? Have you gone through it and seen if there's any typos, if their name is properly capitalized, if there seems to be any mistakes? Because if you're going to start doing automation in your stewardship, which we will talk about, you need to make sure that the data you have in your database is as clean as possible. Make sure you do that maybe every 6 months, just making sure that you can keep things organized and the names at the right place and the data in the right areas. And do you also have a data management policy? What I mean by this, and doesn't have to be super complicated, is that when you're entering a donor's information, does everyone know how to do it in the same way? Is the postal code supposed to be entered in a similar way? Are you writing ON or are you writing Ontario? These are all details that are going to later on save you so much time in cleaning the data. So making sure you have all this information is really important when we're doing automation for stewardship. All right. Now let's talk about how we're going to be segmenting and organizing your data in a different way. So there are 3 main criteria that I think are vital to be able to better understand who makes up your donor database. So number 1, you can think about the amount of their donations. Now, for people when we're thinking about who are our major gifts, we might say, oh, it's anyone that gave over $1,000 is a major donor. Okay, that might be one criteria you might want to think about, about the amount. But it might be also interesting to look at in their donor history, what has been the maximum the donation that they've given or the minimum? What is the average gift is useful? But if let's say in the past couple of years, they've only given 200, but in the past they've given a high amount, maybe they do have the capacity, they just haven't been asked for the right thing. And then you might also want to think about lifetime gift. For example, I was a donor for Oxfam for 10 years as a monthly donor. My lifetime value was what would really show how committed and loyal I was to the organization. Not necessarily the fact that I was only giving 15 a month, but if we looked at it on the whole time of my life, then it made a bigger impact. So these are 3 different things that you might want to consider when doing your segmentation of who is a major donor or an important donor to your organization. Second of all, you might want to look into the frequency of the gift. So is it a one-time gift? Is it a monthly gift? Is it an annual? How many times have they given to your organization? Once again, it comes back to that first date versus second date. If they've only given once, they haven't given again, then there's still some work that needs to be done. But if they have given to your organization over 5 times, then there's a much stronger sense that these are people that are going to give again. And then finally, there's the recency or the date of the last donation. So if they, let's say, gave last year, then they might be more likely to give than if they gave 6 years ago. So what I usually build is this little segmentation matrix. I put stars, you can put points. I usually build it on a point system, which will allow you to then have directly a criteria to evaluate who is in your top segment versus those that are not. So we might think about for the amount, let's say anyone that's given over 1,000 would get 3 points or 3 stars. Those are the top ones. Between 500 and 1,000, they'd get 2, and under 500, they'd get 1. This is one criteria, but you might want to look at other criteria, like we said, to be able to gauge who is really the biggest donors. So this is going to be about the frequency. So they've given once, 1 point, 2 to 3 times, 4 times, you get 3, get the point. From a recency point of view, of course, someone that's given since 2023 is still very warm. The further we go back, the less likely they are to give again. So there's less likelihood that they're considered a major donor. So what this will allow you to give is, for example, you have a donor that gave $2,000. They've given 5 times in their life, and they've given in the last year. They will get a total of 9 points. So in your famous spreadsheet, which I'm sure all of you use, you'll be able to directly, for every donor, have a point out of 9. And then you can filter by that from top to bottom. And then those that have 9 and 8 points, for example, those are your crème de la crème. Those are the donors that you're going to want to spend the most time with building up your stewardship, because they're the ones that have the most capacity and have shown the most loyalty. Those that have 7 to 6 points, it's not that we're going to ignore them, it's that we might do different stewardship strategies based on the capacity of your organization. So this is just one tool that I found is very helpful, and any organization of any size can implement it either directly in their CRM, or if you don't have a good CRM right now, you can download your data into a spreadsheet and do it simply from there. I've done that for many organizations and it works just as well. So this is just one tool that I found is very helpful for organizations. Okay, now that you have this data, you know who's on the top, now what? Well, this information can also help you to supplement that data of what other kind of data do we want. Well, you might want to send out a survey to everyone to know, okay, I know how much they've given, I know their donor behavior, but I don't necessarily know who they are. You might not know where they live. Well, hopefully you do if you're giving tax receipts, but you might not know how old they are. You might not know why are they giving to your organization. So one way is sending out a survey, offer a little incentive like, oh, you get a $50 gift card to, I don't know, something interesting that's related to your organization, just to get some information around your donor personas. Having these profiles of who makes up your donor database, or also your newsletter, so potential donors, allows you to better know how to approach these people. If they're over 70, you're going to have different stewardship strategies than if they're under 25. One, you might do the TikTok themes, and you might do some trending social media stuff. If they're over 70, you might be doing more phone calls, because don't try to phone call your 25-year-olds. They're going to be terrified and hang up the phone on you because they're not used to receiving phone calls, even if that's what a phone is for. So this is really going to help you by collecting as much data on your people as possible to establish which stewardship strategies to use moving forward. So where can you get this external data other than surveys, of course? You might want to look into national or regional or provincial reports. So there's things like, there's consultant firms, there's AFP, there's Imagine Canada, there's Canada Helps that often will publish reports on giving trends. So who is giving? Is it more women? It's definitely more women all the time. It's always women that are the more active, but who's giving the most is not necessarily that. What age range is giving to which causes? You can do some research on that. There's also some international philanthropy institutions like Wings or Alliance Magazine that might have some other trending articles that can help you get some idea on what is trending, let's say in the environmental space, who is more likely to give. In Quebec, for example, where I'm from, they did this amazing report that showed that it's actually youth under 25 that have been giving the most to environmental organizations. You might want to also listen to some university research papers. So PhiLab, which I work at, is a philanthropy research lab that does a lot of research on philanthropy. What are the trends? But you might want to also look at Carleton University and other academic institutions that are doing research on this, and also AFP chapters. AI can be also very helpful of scouring the internet to find information. Take everything with a grain of salt, but if you're starting from scratch, you might want to look at AI to help, to just give you some information. All right, this is just a sample donor persona. So for example, Michel is in his late 60s and has always cared for the environment as an outdoor enthusiast. He lives out in the country and has a stable income over 80K a year. He prefers learning about the nonprofits through regular newsletters, and he's not very active on social media. So he's maybe more of a prospect for legacy giving. So these are the kinds of things that you might want to take into consideration. Once you have this data after a survey of this is what's come out, it'll change the way you will be able to approach your donors in a different way. So let's say if this was your main persona. Actually, I had a client that this was kind of what their personas looked like, and they were an environmental nonprofit. And when we looked at the results, we realized that there was no youth under 25 in their entire newsletter list. So what did that tell us? It told us that there was something missing in their strategies of acquiring the level of donors that was going to be the most likely to actually give to the organization. Okay, so that's enough about donor personas. Now let's get into the stewardship strategies. Okay, so once we know who gives to us, so let's say if it's people like Michelle, or let's say if it's young people, we'll be able to establish what strategies we will use moving forward. So we'll be doing emails. Email strategies can be automated. So we can really start doing an email series that says, okay, once they give a one-time donation, we're going to establish an email series over 3 months that will bring them towards a second gift or a monthly gift. Maybe for people like Michelle, we might do physical mail, or snail mail as we call it. So you might want to also look into social media mentions. Are these the type of people that will be happy to be tagged on social media to be said thank you? This might be more likely for foundations or for companies, but you never know. Maybe individuals would also love a shout out of their story. Do we want to do phone calls? Do we want to have public visibility? Do we want to share their story? So one of the things I want you to remember is that even if people say, no, I don't want to be thanked, everyone wants to be thanked and everyone wants to be recognized. So figuring out who your people are first is going to help you establish what kind of strategies you're going to be able to use to move forward. Remember, whenever you're establishing your stewardship strategies, think about what is aligned with your values. For example, I had this story about this animal shelter who did a barbecue to raise funds and to say thank you to some of their donors, but it was a meat, like it had a meat at their barbecue, and a lot of people gave a huge backlash about that. So if you're an environmental organization, you're doing a golf tournament, for example, some people might criticize, well, at golf clubs, they're super unenvironmentally friendly. If you're, let's say, doing a contest to win a cruise, and cruises are known to be super environmentally destructive. Keep these things in mind when building up your stewardship strategies so that you're respecting both your values as well as the values of your people that are supporting you. Also keep in mind, what is your capacity? Once again, if you're a team of 2, are you able to handwrite letters to every single of your 500, 1,000 donors? Maybe not. But this is where that segmentation is going to come into so much help, because you're going to be able to say, okay, well, I don't have the capacity to send it to 1,000 people, but maybe I have the capacity to send it to the top 15, top 20, top 25, and really have that personalized approach to those that have the more likelihood of giving the most. Think about the return on investment. Of course, we don't want to see our donors just as dollars as well. So you have to also make sure that you have the capacity to be asking and giving them things, not just based on the amount they give, but their stories. So there's this really great tool that I use for collecting testimonials called Proof Pact. And what you could do is, for example, send an email to all of your donors that instead of just directly asking for a second gift, you say, why did you donate to us today? What inspired you to support our organization? And by showing interest, you're not only creating that second touch point, you're creating engagement that can allow you to get to know the donor, but also with their consent, you can use those stories to build onto the next donation ask you're going to do. So also something we need to think about is what to do for each different segment. So let's say we do the handwritten thank you cards for the top donors, those 9 to 8 points, if you remember from the matrix. But then what are you going to do for the 7 and 6? Are you going to send personalized emails that are from, not from info at or donors at, they're going to be from Katherine at environmentalnonprofit.com. You want to make sure that people feel like it's personal and not just an automatic email that's being sent out. How much money you can invest is something that needs to be considered. Of course, I've had a lot of people that receive thank you gifts in the mail, and I feel like I only gave $20, and I feel like they're sending me over $20 worth of gift by mail. So what's the point? I felt that way about PETA that just sent me, I made a $20 gift or something. And I received a huge email package with tons of paper, tons of stickers and stuff to distribute. And I was just like, how much did it cost for them to send out this mail package to me? Now, while I understand this is a stewardship strategy of trying to make me feel special, I personally found it was wasteful. Had I given a bigger donation, I would have felt less bad. But for smaller donations, make sure that you're not overdoing it from a financial perspective so that people feel like you're being wasteful. What you also have to think about is, what are your donors saying? If in your survey, you can always ask, or upon donation, would you like to receive physical mail or would you like to be excluded? You can ask people their own preferences so that you're not insulting them or doing things that go against what they're interested in doing. Okay. Oh, that is all. I had another slide. I don't know where it went, but yeah, sorry about that. There was a slide after this. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to have more of the discussion. So Sam, we can hop in. I'm gonna try to see where my other slide is.
That was great, Katherine. That's fine. It's the ghost slide. It's all good. We've all been there. No worries at all. We do have some opportunities for questions now. And our very first question from Josh. Josh, thank you so much for writing into us today. The question, Katherine, that Josh has, and then I've got a few of my own, but we'll get to Josh's first. How much email communication in a month to donors is too much? Great question.
This is such a difficult question to answer because it really depends on each person. I've had people that are like, oh, more than once a month and I'm unsubscribing. And then if you look at the data, the more emails you send, the more that people will open your emails. So what I always recommend is you need to look at your data. What is your data saying? Do some tests and also ask your people. Or what you can do is also offer different opportunities to your donors of unsubscribing to some lists and not others. So for example, what I recommended to one of my clients recently is they can have a monthly, for example, summary email that brings together all of the other individual emails that they had sent earlier that month into like a recap email. So people can unsubscribe to like all regular emails except for that one monthly one. But if they want to receive all of them, then they will. So offering that kind of flexibility for your donors will allow it to be a more personalized experience, which could increase the likelihood that they'll open your emails. But from a statistical point of view, everyone that I've talked to is saying that the more emails you send, the more likely people are to see some of your emails, and your open rates will actually increase and your click-through rates will as well. But it depends on each organization.
It all depends. And I love that we're using data to make those decisions. Data informed organizations are always ones that tend to be ahead of the curve a little bit. I've been obviously in this sector for a very long time. I think the best stewardship sort of examples that I have are ones that were beautifully personal and connected to the donor. Can you talk to me a little bit about some of those that you've done and sort of some of the impact that they've made in terms of second gift conversion?
I have a great story for that, actually, that it was really the power of the handwritten card. Let's dive into some storytelling. So this was in an animal shelter, and they were doing this campaign specifically, and it was in February, so right after their annual campaign. They were doing a campaign for $250,000 to fund a sterilization clinic for cats, because there was a huge overpopulation of cat problem. So they sent it to all of their like mailing list, and it was a flop. Like hardly anyone responded. They were really not reaching their target, except for one donor who wrote a check for $250,000. And when they reached out to her to be like, okay, where's this coming from? She explained that for years she had been making a $500 annual donation to the shelter, and every year she got a handwritten Christmas card saying thank you so much for your support, blah 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 blah. But it was handwritten. She felt an organization that takes the time to thank me and recognize me and focus on those details of relationship building is an organization that I trust to bring this project to fruition. So people trust people that also take the time to build those relationships. So that's for me. If that doesn't convince you to do stewardship, I don't know what will. But it's those personalized notes of feeling seen. There's actually this research that I just read. Someone did her entire master's thesis on donor retention and loyalty. And one of the highest criteria around staying and what makes people stay with an organization is this feeling seen as for who they are.
Yes.
Like they know Katherine, not just donor number 765.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's just a little cute story, but it
I
really
loved
shows
it.
it's proof that it works.
And I know a lot of people are, you may be on the line and they don't have a stewardship plan, they don't have a matrix. They, to be honest, they're a small team. It can feel daunting as to where to start. Where are you making us sort of head for any guidance on where to begin?
Sure. So I think the segmentation can be very easily done, but it depends on how many people you have on your list, right? So you can honestly doing a quick segmentation based on basic criteria might take you 2-3 hours. You just can, if you base it on how many times they gave, when's the last time they gave, and how much they've given the last year, you can easily segment that on Excel in a couple hours. If you have any questions also at the end, I'll be sharing my book a call with me. We can talk about those specific things with me. It would be my pleasure to help you out and see if I can help you out more as a consultant as well. But yeah, so what I would suggest as anyone that is in a small team is email strategies that can be automated are probably your best bet. So for example, setting up an automatic email series so that whenever someone makes a first-time gift, they will automatically be tagged as first donors. Most email management applications will allow you to then create a workflow. So they're tagged as first donor. You can have a little trigger that says, okay, they did this, wait 24 hours, and then they get this email. And it can say, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. This is the kinds of things that you can expect from us moving forward. If you're not following us on social media yet, you can follow us here, check out our website, whatever, send them who you are. Then you can have a little thing that says, wait 3 days or wait a week, however long you want to wait for the next email. And then automatically a second email is going to say, well, here's a story about this forest that we preserved because of donors like you, storytelling. Once again, wait whatever timeline you want. A third email that might go deeper into how else can you get involved? We have this ongoing petition going on. You can sign this. Have you watched this educational video that we have? The more views, the better it is. Then the fourth one can be a direct thank you from, let's say, your board president or your CEO or your executive director that's more personalized, maybe even a little Loom video. You can integrate thank you so much, and it's a video. And then finally, maybe after the fourth or the fifth email, you can say, hey, did you know that we have a monthly donor program? And this is the best way to support our organization because it allows for stability. This is automatic. So you don't have to be sending these out and spending much time. But once that automatic email series is sent out, you're going to be having this stewardship that's happening behind the scenes and hopefully building up more of your donors in the background, either towards a monthly gift, which I highly recommend for everyone to do a monthly gift ask, or at least to have a second gift ask.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, beautifully said. And walk me through a stewardship plan. I think, when I think about, the opportunity to kind of take fundraising and make it a team sport, I feel the same way about stewardship, that often, getting board members involved and volunteers involved in stewardship can be quite effective. Can you talk about working that into a stewardship plan?
100%. So, for example, if you want to talk about those handwritten cards, this is a great way of getting your board or other volunteers involved. So you get everyone together. Okay, we're bringing the beer if you want, or coffee, tea, whatever it is you want to bring. Kombucha. I love kombucha personally. If someone's bringing kombucha, I'm there. And you say, okay, here are the cards, and we're all going to be sending these messages. Here are some template messages that you can use, and handwrite them and sign them with your name. I'm who? Volunteer of the organization. Or of course, you can have just your board members to give it a bit more credibility. But even then, like, people sending to other people can be a great way of doing it. And it's also a great team building exercise that allows people to move forward. You might want to make a call out for artists within your board members or your volunteers. Hey, does anyone want to help us design these personalized cards that are made from and by the organization for their donors? You might want to also ask for people to help you with the copywriting, or to share their story of why are they on the board of directors? Why are they volunteering for your organization? These are the stories that can then supplement in your stewardship strategy and help build up this sense that you're not alone. These are all the people that also count on us, and that will build up your support system.
Yeah, beautifully said as well. Walk me through, the opportunity for us to connect with our donors and therefore, get that second gift, that third gift, that monthly donation. Walk me through the stewardship for legacy giving.
Okay, so this is a great one. And I actually did a really amazing episode recently on legacy giving, specifically for the environment. About legacy. Before we go into that, I'm going to be sharing in the chat if you want to dive into that. And it's really specifically what's awesome in the podcast episode is that we specifically talk about legacy for environmental organizations. So I really think if you're interested in that topic, that you should definitely check this out. So Tess Conrad is a good friend and consultant of mine that dived into it. And so what she brings up, and what I often talk about with legacy gifts, is people see it as like this huge thing of like, well, we have to be so well established and have all of these like legal formatting, and just start having conversations with your donors. Of course, we don't recommend usually having a legacy giving program if you're under 5 years old as an organization. Let yourself establish some credibility, have some donors before you invest in it. But keep in mind that legacy giving can take 5 to 10 years to actually show results. Because of course, like, let's be real here. People are not signing their legacy plan and then dying the next year. This is what it is, right? So it could take some time before it actually shows fruit, but you need to start at some point. So what Tess recommends, and what I've often talked to a lot about my donors, is that you can start by just sharing stories about legacy giving, of what's the best way to support an organization for generations to come, or for the next generation, is by what is your legacy going to be? So of course, if you do have people that have given to your organization or have already said that they will give to your organization their will, why don't you hop on a call with them? Why don't you ask them, hey, we'd love to hear what motivated you? And we were actually sharing in the episode how I just imagine it. They're like, yes, when I was 20 years old, I would chain myself to trees to save the forest. And I want the next generation to save the same forest. I can just imagine, of course, these are like in my head, the stories. It might not be that at all. But asking them their story, and then that's a great stewardship story to share with your donors of, let's say if you have in your segment people that you know are like Michelle, and they're over 60 years old, and they've been with your organization for over 20 years. These are the people that are going to be more likely to support you as a legacy gift. So why don't you send them specifically an email that says, hear this story about Francois, or about Jeanette, or about Melanie, who decided to give a gift in their will to our organization. And here's their story. So by starting to sprinkle, you're not asking, would you like to make a legacy gift? You're just asking, it's kind of subtly of like, hey, here's an idea. And then you can at the bottom of the email say, would you be interested in learning more about our legacy program? And that's it.
Right.
And then once you start collecting that data, you can then start building up your program and obviously learning more about what would the gifts look like. Are you looking for just gifts in your will? Are you looking for, some people will give investments. Some people will actually donate their house. So you can really start looking into the different opportunities.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent. Lots of great information. We've got a couple of questions. I want to get to those as well. Abdul Ghaffar has put a question in here. How can my organization approach someone who donated for a specific program, and in brackets, feeding of less privileged during a festival of my nonprofit organization to become a monthly donor? Great question.
Great question. And of course, I think when people have given to any specific program, of course, the best way to talk to them about continuing with the organization is to showcase how you have other programs that might also interest them. So obviously making that connection of thank you so much for giving to this. This is what has happened since. Did you know we also have this? And not just, let's say we don't just help the needy in the context of this festival, but these are people that might need support throughout the year. So kind of giving them that step back, what is the wider breadth of your programs, to explain that also even just building up towards this festival takes however many months, or feeding families is a monthly thing. So when you try to invest, I usually talk about the 3 Ps of monthly donors. So number 1 is allowing people to become proactive. So of course, by becoming proactive and becoming a monthly donor, you're going to be much more likely to support the cause. So really get them to think like, you supported this. This is part of who you are. So kind of delving into their personality of like, you cared about this. Like, we need people like you to be part of our programs. Number 2 is to talk about these long-term projects. It's kind of like especially in this case of feeding, like teach a man, give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach a man to fish, he'll, eat forever. The same kind of thing needs to be talked about if we're looking for systemic change. So by investing in our wider programs of actually getting people to no longer need these specific days of feeding during the festival, we're actually going to be able to solve the problem. So that's the long-term projects. And the third one is, if you're an advocacy organization, you can say that by becoming a monthly donor, you're actually investing in the political power of the organization. So for example, by becoming a member or by becoming a monthly donor, you're showcasing to the world and to the governments and to everything that this is a cause that is important and that needs support. This has great mobilization capacities to then advocate for policy change or for bigger investments from the government of like, listen, we have 3,000 people that donate to us on a monthly basis. I think that the government should invest more in this program to support these people. So those are kind of some arguments that you could use to really push people.
Okay. Yeah, great job. And Abdul Ghaffar has asked another great question here. We're launching our legacy giving program later this fall for our 30th anniversary. What are some things you would have wished you knew before launching?
So let's say if I were to do, like, if I were planning this, of what I would do is I would go into your oldest donors, first of all, and look into who are my oldest donors in those 30 years. Are there any that have, maybe not given a legacy gift yet? Of course, I'm guessing you haven't done anything like that before. So I would look into collecting more information and stories from my oldest donors to be able to establish this series. If I had no idea how to do legacy, I would actually look into the Canadian Association of Gift Planners, CAGP, to really get to understand what are the different tools that can be used for legacy giving, because there's so much more than just giving a gift in their will. Of course, we don't have to go into the details of that, but CAGP is a great place to start to better understand just how many different formats there can be for legacy giving. So that would be like the 2 things, but also taking more time to plant the season, collecting stories from our donors before launching the program to see and be able to share those stories with the people afterwards would be great.
Brilliant. We have a question here as well. In the absence of a grant, what is the best strategy my organization can apply to get 100 donors to donate? And I'm just wanting to make sure I got the math here. I think it's $6.70 each monthly. Abdul Ghaffar, if I've gotten that wrong, feel free to just put in the chat what you're hoping to say. But he's basically looking for that, if he doesn't have a lot of money to start the program, where can he start?
Yeah, so basically monthly donations as a first-time strategy is just a bit more difficult, because that's kind of like asking someone to be your girlfriend when they haven't met you yet, or your boyfriend. It's like a bigger commitment. I've done it with street fundraising, and I really put it forward. My arguments that I've used to people of why they should start with donating monthly is that it's a lot easier to budget. So instead of saying, look, most people on an annual gift will give something like $100 to $200 a year. Instead of having that be one time, like you're making a one-time gift, you can spread it out. As much as we spend $10 or $15 on Netflix every month or Amazon Prime, or, you know, you can have it spread out throughout the year to have it more stable. So it's about building up your arguments beforehand so that your case for support makes more sense. But I would suggest starting with maybe a one-time gift. If you don't have any donors, or if you're building it up, start with a one-time gift campaign and then do that automatic email stewardship that's going to lead towards why you need people on a monthly basis. Because people will tend to be more reticent to invest directly into monthly giving unless they've been following you for a long time. So let's say if they're on your newsletter list or if they're following you on social media, you might be able to get some monthlies, 100%. So if that's your only goal, showcasing that is the only way to give to you, you can have that as an argument. You might get less people, but those people that do sign up are going to be more likely to stay with you.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Yeah, absolutely. Talk to me a little bit about events and, you know, taking a person that attends an event, stewarding them to become a donor, as I like to call them. It can be challenging to do that, but so many people get, you know, 100 or 150 people to an event and they want to transition them. Any tips for us there?
Well, I think it comes down to what the event was. Let's say I had this organization that I worked with recently that was an international development organization. They're very well known. They have every year, they have this race type event, but that has nothing to do with the cause, you know, like the event itself is not related to international development. It's just like running and then you collect money for the cause. So they've had a really high attrition rate from that event. So first of all, it's about thinking of, let's say before you do an event, try to have a connection with your organization. So the people that are participating know why they're participating, that it's not just because I want to run a marathon. It's like having a connection to the cause. So trying to at least plant the seeds of why this cause is important at the event is the first step of stewardship when they're there. Second of all, the email series is a great way of continuing that relationship and getting them to know your organization. So you might take a longer way before asking for a donation. So for example, explaining like, thank you so much for participating and showing the results. We were able to raise this much from the event. Thank you so much. Thanks people like you. Here's what the impact we'll be able to have because of that. And then you can move on to the next thing. But reminding people of the mission, maybe doing some more presentation of who we are, what we do, and then building up towards, did you know that by making a donation directly, you have a much bigger impact on the organization? And sometimes being very transparent of like, when you donate at an event, 50% of the donation goes towards the event. And most people know this, which is because their tax receipt won't be the amount of the ticket they gave, for example. And you can be very transparent of saying, and I think a lot of donors appreciate that transparency. We would prefer that more of your donor dollars goes directly to the cause. So how about one of the suggestions I had made for a client was they had these events every year and they were starting to get exhausted from all these events. I was like, why don't you invite them to like a mock event of like, you're going to buy a ticket to this event, but it's actually not going to happen. But you would have gotten it. You would have spent the $75 to our dinner. But now you're buying this virtual pretend dinner, but all of the money is actually going to be going to pay for the dinner of this family. Yeah. So you're actually like passing it on to the next person. So these are kinds of ways that you can transition of like, you are willing to spend this money. Then now we're asking you to spend the same amount of money, but all of it goes to the organization. So those are a couple of different tools that you could use.
And in terms of, we only have 5 minutes, I knew it was going to go by so fast, and it did. We talked a little bit about resources. I know you're going to send some of those anywhere that you can send us. I know you've got your website up here. Any other tips for us in terms of resources?
Yes. So of course I sent the podcast. I think that's one that's starting to really go. If not, I'm very, very, very active on LinkedIn, and I really love sharing a lot of tidbits of information. So anyone that would like to follow me, if you're not already following me, is by following me on LinkedIn. And of course, because you signed up to this webinar, you will be getting some emails from me that share some really interesting tidbits. if ever there's someone that's on the call right now that really needs help implementing this and then wants to explore ways of how I can help you, you can always book an like an exploration call with me. I'm going to share the link in a second. I'm a bit busy till the end of the month, but for July, I have some availabilities. This is not just a sales pitch, okay? Like on these calls, I actually give you concrete advice. So if there's like a specific aspect of stewardship that you're like, I have a specific question about this, you have that half an hour or we can talk about it. So please feel free. Oh, Hannah is just one step ahead and sharing the links along with me.
That's wonderful.
It's because I was sharing it in the hosts and panelists and not to everyone. I see, my bad. But yeah, those are some different tools that I would share to help you guys move forward.
Well, I learned a lot today. Thank you so much. I appreciate the enthusiasm around stewardship. I don't feel so alone anymore. I'm usually the one that's chatting about it. It was great to have this conversation today, and thanks to all of the wonderful people that have joined us across the country and even in Mexico today. So we were all over the world today, which is always great. And thank you so much, Katherine, for the great advice today. And for inspiring us all to take on stewardship, not to be shy about it, right? I mean, it's something that we can all do. Any little piece is going to help move forward for that second gift and third gift, and hopefully a forever donor.
Of course, and
Thank you so much.
Just quick reminder: you don't have to do the most expensive thing. Sending a little email that says, "Thank you so much. I saw you. Thank you for your gift." That's all.
Yeah.
Even that is better than
100%.
nothing. So do what you can with what you have.
Great closing words today. Thank you so much for the Capacity Building Institute as well for this wonderful opportunity every single month. We're getting ready for July, everybody. We're getting ready for July 24th. We will see all of you there. I'm Sam Laprade. And thank you so much. And go do something for stewardship. Go reach out to a donor and do that today. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.